In the Trek universe, technology has cured countless issues, has solved countless problems, including disease, famine, and even faster than light travel. But can technology handle something as human as grief? In today's live stream, we are going to be talking about 5 different ways that future people use technology to handle grief with varying levels of success. What I would love for you to do is rate in the comments or rate in the chat each strategy as far as the effectiveness between 1 and 5. 1 being, yeah, this strategy sucks. And 5 being, this is awesome. I would use this today. Give me this technology now. For those of you watching on the replay, the timestamps will be below so that you can jump ahead at any time. But for those of you who are new, I would like to say, and for those of you who are returning, welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. I am your host, Charisse, the Sci-Fi Savage, and let's get started with strategy number 1. So this strategy I am calling the memory wipe. And our example for this particular type of technology comes from Star Trek Voyager, Season 5, Episode 11, Latent Image. In this episode, the Doctor's memory of saving Ensign Kim's life has been erased because he had to choose between Kim and another crew member, and then he was overwhelmed by guilt. Captain Janeway decided that it was easier to erase his memories than to let him go through this kind of like loop that was going on in his mind. But Seven convinced her that the Doctor has the right to process his own emotions. So there are definitely some pros and cons with this strategy of the memory wipe. This technology is actually pretty interesting because in this case, obviously, it's a hologram. It's a technological being. Nope. Technological being. It's a technological life force. So changing its memory is pretty easy. You just go into the code and, delete some lines or whatever. But extending this, future technology should surely be able to do this with humans as well, or any other type of alien. You should be able to scan the memory and go into the memory engrams or whatever they say in the show, and then just cut out pieces that would lead to grief. So the pros of this is the grief is gone immediately, right? Because whatever thing was making you sad is not even in your brain anymore. It's not even a thought. It's not a memory. So you don't have to deal with it. The cons, though, is that you might have to do quite a bit of erasing. In this case, all they erased was that moment, that choice that the Doctor made between Ensign Kim and Ensign Rando, whose name I don't know, and I don't even know if they say it in the episode. They probably do. So they just deleted that choice. But I kind of wonder, does the Doctor know what happened to that particular crewman? Like, did they say, oh, they just, she passed away on a away mission or something like that? Like, what did they replace it with? Because in this episode, he's doing all these body scans of each and every person on the crew. And at some point, you got to think he's going to be like, wait, these numbers don't add up. We're missing a whole person. What happened to that person? Where did they go? So if you apply that to us as humans and we wanted to eliminate grief using the memory wipe, there's one of 2 things. You could erase the moment if it's a moment that caused grief, like a moment of, for me in my own life, there was a time in my life when I was homeless, which is crazy. That's a story for another day. But I was homeless for almost 2 years. So that's like a period of time, which I have personally been able to delete from my memory in some ways. But like that's a moment in time that you could delete. But also from my life, I lost my father when he was 10. So when I was 10 years old. So losing my dad when I was a kid changed the whole trajectory of my life, as did being homeless. But if you wanted to remove the grief of me losing my dad, you would have to basically erase him from my whole memory and my whole life, right? Like you'd have to do a lot of erasing and rewriting and rearranging versus if it was like a moment. Also, I would think for people who maybe lose a limb or lose their eyesight or something like that, that could cause a lot of grief and trauma. And while you could erase the memory of that loss, like how that felt when that thing was lost, they're still going to be like, hey, where's my leg? Or you know what I mean? So I'm not sure how effective this particular strategy would be for humans, but you let me know in the chat. Give me a rating from 1 to 5 on the memory wipe technique. 1 being this technique is awful and would never work. 5 being this technique is pretty cool and I would totally use it right now if it existed. Let me know your thoughts on the memory wipe, whether or not this is a good, effective way to handle grief. And while you're doing that, I'm going to check in the chat. Hello. Welcome to everybody who was able to show up live. Hello to everyone who's watching on the replay. Yeah, Wingrace, whatever message you put 3 days ago is gone. I don't know why, but you could put it again. I'm sure it was amazing. Thank you. PS2 Chipper says we need a little 15-second buffer intro. Yeah, maybe my whole intro got cut off. I don't know. I won't know until I rewatch this replay. Wingray says it's better than a nomad memory wipe, like a memory wipe that just roams through your brain. Yeah, that would be tough. Mr. Captain 93 says, immediately this has to be a 4 to 5 long term, but it depends on the person. A 4 to 5 as far as effectiveness, which I think is interesting. And something I didn't really think about until I was talking to you guys right now is what the grief item is. Like, until I was just talking right now, like, is the grief a person? Like in this case, a person who died, but in this case, it was like a choice of whether she should live or not. So it's not like he didn't seem super close to this person and that was part of the grief, is like he barely knew her. It's almost like he was one of us. We barely knew her also. And he picked Harry Kim because he's buddies with him. So it might also be dependent on the situation. Like, what kind of thing are we grieving? What level of grief? Because grief has like flavors, right? So yeah, Wingray says Eternal Sunshine of the Doctor's Mind, but not as interesting of an episode, I think, as that was a movie. Yes, I know. I was homeless. That's a whole story for another day, because it's got a lot going on behind that. DJ Magix says, as cheesy as it seems, I'm going to quote Kirk on this one. I want my pain. I need my pain. I like that. That's really interesting. So Nadia, a 1 is this is not an effective strategy, and a 5 is this is a great strategy, and I would literally use it right now if this technique existed. So that's what the rating is. Yeah, DJ Magix, as far as wanting and needing pain, I think that's really interesting, because I would say, in my own experiences of the 2 things I just mentioned for my own personal life, they have totally shaped who I am as a person. And while I would not wish either of those things on my worst enemy, they have made me who I am, and I'm a better person for it. So there is something to be said about I want my pain, I need my pain. There's definitely something to be said about the function of adversity, not just grief, but like any unpleasant emotions or experiences. There is a place for that in character growth and character building that I don't think can be substituted. So that's a really good point. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, you could relate this to Pulaski wiping memory, but it's not super relatable from this episode. I would give it a 2 out of 5, I guess. Oh, my intro got cut off. Okay, well, it was the best intro I've ever done. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, good to know. So I'll change that next time. Whose memory did Pulaski wipe? Remind me of that. Remind me of what that is. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. Wingray says probably a 2, but it could be used in some cases carefully, kind of like the Crinum time shenanigans. It seems almost impossible to compensate. That is a really good point. And like I was just saying, I think it does depend on maybe the, I don't know if you guys can hear the lawnmower. He decided to come at this exact moment. I guess it depends on the quality of that grief or that issue and how much unwinding and untangling needs to happen. Because in Eternal Sunshine, or whatever the rest of the title of that movie wasn't it like 2 people who were like madly in love and then they wanted to forget each other, so then they had to erase every single memory they ever had together, and that's just like a whole thing. So I guess it does depend a little bit. Nadia says, yeah, I think the utility of the memory wipe strategy depends on what happened and how long ago, how long it happened for. Like if you were held hostage for 5 years and tortured, a memory wipe would be problematic. So I guess a 2.5. It's effective in some cases and not at all in others. And DJ Magix says exactly. PS2 Chipper says, my intro was not cut off. The memory wipe worked. That's funny. I did, Mr. Captain. I wiped the intro from your memory, so it was effective. Yes, colon Orion, colon, whoop, whoop. Oh, Sarjinka and Pen Pals. Okay. Yes. Okay. So Pulaski wiped the memory of the little girl in Pen Pals. And then Dr. Crusher referenced Pulaski's memory wipe technique in Who Watches the Watchers. She also, I think Beverly Crusher also tried to do a memory wipe for, what's his name? Voran, I think, in the episode with, what is the name of this episode? In the episode with Worf's brother Nikolai, when he captures all those aliens and then he hides them away in sickbay, and then one of them gets out, or hides them away in the holodeck, and then one of them escapes the holodeck, and he's like, "Oh no, what's going on?" she like tries to do a memory wipe on him, but then she's like, oh, these people are resistant to memory wipes or whatever. And then they also try to do a memory wipe on Lily Sloan in First Contact, or at least Beverly Crusher says she's going to do a memory wipe. But I think the Borg attack before that's effective. The Orville. Yes. Okay. I need to catch up on the Orville, Mr. Captain, because I am behind on that. I missed the last season for sure, but I think maybe the one before that also. PS2 Chipper says they did the memory wipe on Worf's brother in DS9. No way. Did they really? Because y'all know I'm not up on my DS9 game. Did they do a memory wipe? If Worf's brother came back, are you talking about Worf's brother Nikolai, or are you talking about Kern? Because if they did this on Nikolai, I need to know what happened to him and his baby mama on that random planet that they dropped them all off on. Like, what was he doing on Deep Space Nine? Why is he not on that planet? I need more information. Nadia says, no, not Nikolai. I hate him. Nikolai has an enemy in Nadia. DJ Magic says, I think it would lead to a constant mystery, like when the aliens wiped everyone's memories except for Data in that TNG episode, Clues. There would always be weird little things that led back to the incident. I kind of think that too. That there would be little clues. But in the case of that episode, Clues, there were so many clues that everybody was like, what the heck is going on? But if maybe the incident wasn't that massive of an incident, you would just think it's like deja vu. You know, you might be like, oh, that's weird, and just like move on with your life. I don't know. Was Bashir who wiped Worf's other brother? Which brother? What is going on? Which brother was it Nikolai or was it Kern? Or does Worf have a third brother that I am unaware of? Don't tell her anything. Robert says that was just lazy writing in DS9. Maybe it was lazy writing in TNG also. I don't know. What are you talking about? I know nothing. So now no one's going to answer my question about whose memory gets wiped in DS9, because you guys know I'm doing the rewatch. Okay, all right. He says, Nikolai, don't put too many onions in the sauce. Okay. Now I'm so curious, but you guys know I'm going to be doing the rewatch on DS9, so it's all good. Okay, so this brings us to our next strategy. I think overall, you guys rated that strategy around 2.5. So depending on the situation, it may or may not work. The consensus was, and in some situations, it will work beautifully, and in others, it will either not work at all, or it's going to trigger so many other linked memories to happen that you're always going to be looking over your shoulder trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, the next technological solution that future people use, I'm going to call the augments. So in this case, the example episode comes from Lower Decks, Season 5, Episode 1, Dos Cerritos. And in this episode, the crew of the Cerritos meets all of their duplicates in an alternate universe or whatever. So Rutherford's bestie, Tendi, has left the ship to pay a family debt, and we don't know when she's going to come back. In the alternate universe, she decided not to come back. So the alternate Rutherford, who they call Otherford, so cute, right? Otherford deleted all of his memories about Tendi. So that's a little bit of the memory wipe, like that's that same idea. However, Otherford also adjusted his friendship matrix so that he would not need to make new friends ever again in the future. Like he wouldn't care about making friends. He wouldn't care about friends. He also started replacing many of his internal organs to be more cybernetic so that he could have and experience less feelings. So yes, he was basically making himself a Borg without that whole hive mind situation. So this is a little bit different, even though technically he did delete all his memories of Tendi. So that is the mind wipe technique. Because of that adjustment to say and I don't want friends in the future, that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to get at with this example of augments. So what if instead of deleting the thing that caused grief, you could adjust the way your brain functions so that you never experience that grief again? What do you guys think about that strategy? So what's interesting here is that Otherford, the irony, now that Otherford has erased this ability to get hurt from losing friends, right? He's just been like, I don't care about friends, so I can't get hurt or be happy. Now that he's done this, he doesn't care. right? He doesn't care whether or not he makes friends because he took that ability away. So it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like if I take the ability to care away, then I don't care whether or not I make friends. So then, yeah, I can never get hurt because I don't really care that I get hurt. So I think as far as effectiveness, we can say the pro of it is that it's also extremely effective as the memory wipe technique. The cons, though, is that you don't only miss out on the hurt and grief from losing friendships in the future, or by extension, more intimate romantic connections probably, but you also lose the joy, right? So it's like, yeah, I can't be hurt again because I have no feelings or desire for that, but also you can't be happy because think of how happy Tendi and Rutherford make each other. They're so sweet, they're so cute, and their whole little group, you know, and the way that they bond is really beautiful. And season 5 of Lower Decks is all about the alternate, well, it's not all about, but the through line is about alternate realities. And in one of the episodes, one of the characters says, it's really beautiful the way that Boimler and Mariner, for example, are still friends in any universe. You know, and I don't know, that hit me in the feels, kind of like the Data and Geordi thing, or like the Tom and Harry thing. Something about that idea that you can have a friendship that's so deep, it just transcends time and space is really beautiful. And of course, you can extend that to like the love of your life that transcends time and space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that what's interesting about this strategy, the augments, is that this is actually something we can sort of do. Maybe not totally with technology at this moment, but the idea of shutting our hearts off when we get hurt by something so that we don't get hurt again, we do have some ability to do that as humans, even without external technology. And we have the same pitfalls, right? The bonus is like, okay, great, you've shut that part of your heart down so you can never be hurt again. But then the downside is like, yeah, but you can't be happy again in that area either, right? If you go completely numb, you don't experience any of the feelings, good or bad. And for some people, that's fine because the pain is so bad that the good doesn't seem worth it. But I always compare, and by the way, all of this is speaking from experience. So I feel like I feel so kindred with Rutherford or Otherford. But I do have to say it's kind of akin to flying first class or business class. Like if you've never done it before, there's not a lot of appeal for some people. Like for me, before I ever flew business class or first class, I was kind of like, what's the point? We're all on the same plane. We all get to the same place. I don't get it. But then once I did fly first class, I was like, oh man, this experience is lovely. Like this is making my trips feel so much better. And just, I mean, with nothing else, just the space, just the leg room and the space. And it just, everything about the experience was elevated. And I left the plane just feeling better than I normally do. But I didn't know what I was missing out on, is what I'm saying. So similar to this, if you cut off the ability to feel bad, and also you cut off the ability to feel good, you don't know what you're missing out on. So it's really hard to feel bad about that. You know, you're not going to be like, oh, but I'm missing out on just really having deep friendships and like, you won't know that. You won't know, you won't care. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat on a scale of 1 to 5. How effective do you think this augment strategy is? Replacing your ability to feel, basically, with an ability to be numb on command. A 1 is, this is a terrible strategy and would never work. A 5 is, this is an awesome strategy. It would absolutely work. And I would use it right now if it existed. I'm going to check the chat and then we'll get to the next one. Okay, I'm not going to read DJ Magic's thing because everyone's saying, delete it. So I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to scroll past that. But I will read, there is no spoon. That was like one of my favorite lines from that entire movie, from The Matrix. I guess PS2 Chipper says Otherford does not feel indigestion. I guess not, because if you look at the image, let me put it back up. He's replaced most of his body with augments. So not just like the parts that have emotions, he's replaced almost everything. And I don't remember if they said like a percentage or whatever, but he even put like a third arm that comes out of his body. Like he's gone through the efforts of definitely not. Yeah, he's gone through the efforts of changing a lot about him. Yay, PS2 Chipper has donated a membership. So if you've not joined the away team, you want to snap up that membership while it is available. It's first come, first serve. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. PS2 Chipper says, I think that's called therapy. Which one's called therapy? Because what Otherford did is definitely not therapy. Oh, the one character trait we know about Aram too. Aram, who's that? Is that a DS9 reference? Thanks for deleting the spoiler. You definitely can't learn. So Robert says you definitely can't learn if you don't have grief as a teacher. Yeah, you cannot learn if you don't have grief as a teacher. And I would say grief doesn't have to be the only teacher, obviously, right? All of our experiences as humans informs us in our lives. But I would say that grief is not that like comfy, like people wouldn't choose it. People wouldn't be like, oh, you know what I want? Hard times, adversity. Like that's not really our jam, right? We're always trying to make things easier and nicer. And I'll speak for myself. I'm always trying to make life easier for myself and not harder for myself. And grief is one of those things that's just unavoidable unless you had some of these future technologies. Mr. Captain says, is it a memory wipe or a personality adjustment? This is sounding philosophical. In Otherford's case, that's a good question. In Otherford's case, I think he did so many modifications through his augments that it was a personality change. Because when Rutherford was talking, like if you've ever seen Lower Decks, Rutherford and Tendi are super excited about everything. Like they're hyper, they're excited, they're friendly, they're bubbly. And Rutherford kind of like, nothing is ever bad. If anything bad ever happens, somehow he turns it into like this really positive, chipper thing. Otherford isn't like that. He's just kind of like, he's just about his work. He comes in, he does the job, he's done. The end. So yeah, I would say it did definitely change his personality because when Rutherford met Otherford, he was like, hey, we can be buddies. Let's work together. Woo! And Otherford was just like, okay. And just kind of walked away. So yeah, I would say it's a total like personality adjustment in his case. Would that change our personalities? I don't know. If we didn't do quite as much augmentation, if we just changed our abilities to feel future grief, would that change our whole personality? I don't think so. But would it change the amount of enrichment we could experience in life? Yes. This is my thought. Exoteric. The topic tonight is, can future technology eliminate grief? So we are on our second piece of technology to see like how effective we think that it is. And PS2 Chipper said, good grief, which is really funny. Robert says, pain that isn't transformed gets transferred. That is very, very true. Exoteric says, can technology cure grief? No. Well, that was a short chat. TJ Magic says, this one is triggering for growing up a military brat, moving bases, because it's very similar. Once you realize either of you can leave at any moment when you're a kid. I know some kids who did this. Exactly, DJ Magics. That's a perfect example of something that's like, it wasn't like you got hurt. It wasn't like you fell in love and had this amazing relationship and then they broke your heart and now you never want to love again. Like it wasn't a person. It wasn't like a specific person that you can tie it all back to. It was just a lifestyle of moving. You don't know when you're going to move. You don't know where you're going to move, but you know you're not going to be here for long. So then you have that question in your head of, do I let people get close? Do I still make friends? Or do I just am I just kind of aloof into myself because I don't want to bond with somebody and then have to leave them suddenly, which you know you will have to do eventually. And it's a hard choice. And there's no wrong choice, but definitely closing yourself off and being like, I'm just not going to have friends because it sucks to lose them. Limits your experience of life, right? Nadia says, girl, going business class on a long haul, 12 to 15 hour flight is flipping amazing. I 100% believe you. I think the flight I took, I think I've only done first class like once or twice. And I think it was maybe 4 hours, 6 hours, something a lot shorter than 12 or 15. But that alone was amazing. Like it was amazing. I think 1 hour, I probably wouldn't get the full juice out of it, but a couple hours, yeah. Yes, we did have this quote. Let's see how many times I can get this quote today. Don't take my pain away. I need my pain. PS2 Chipper says, first class goes to my head. I just think about how much better I am than the plebs that walk past me. They're so funny. Okay, so Nadia rates this strategy as a 4 or 5. I like this. Windgrace says, I hate this. You wouldn't be you in the least. Yeah, Windgrace, I would agree if you're doing the full-on internal readjustment that Otherford did, you would not be you. But I think if you did it maybe on a smaller scale, you could still be you. Maybe not, maybe a less express version of yourself, right? You wouldn't be as outgoing, you wouldn't be as friendly. But I think you can go from like a little bit of a personality change to a whole different kind of robotic person. Mr. Captain says, first class on a flight is a 5. You have me sold, but that was a question, right? Can first class cure your grief? Yes, it can. Exoteric says, I'm a broken old Marine. I would have loved to live long enough to see augments. Yeah, it's interesting, Exoteric, because I feel like, I don't know. So we've only had, I think Nadia's the only one who's voted on how effective she thinks this technique would be, which was like a 4 or 5. I haven't finished scrolling though, so maybe some more people have voted. I think what Otherford did would absolutely work, but it would change your personality completely, right? Because he did a full-on overhaul. But also, I kind of feel like, what's the point? Like, what is the point? If you're not connecting with other humans on a deep level, if you're not vulnerable enough to even be in danger of grief, what's the point? I'm not saying being vulnerable 24/7, because that is not your girl. But what I'm saying is not having the ability to feel pain means you also don't have the ability to feel joy. And if you're just like numb and neutral forever, it just doesn't seem worth it to me. So what Otherford has done, now he's just like a machine, and he does his work and he goes home and whatever, but he's not really enjoying his work. Whereas Rutherford loves his work. He loves working on the warp core. He loves getting into the panels. Like he gets so much joy from that. And he loves being with his friends and figuring out, going on adventures and figuring out mysteries. And I don't know, there's a lot of joy that I feel like Otherford no longer has access to. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Is it effective? I would say yes. Is it like the best way to live in the world? I don't think so. Oh, yes. Okay. Arium, the cyborg from Discovery. Yes. I read that as Arium, and I was like, I have no idea who that is. But yes, the cyborg from Discovery from season 1, right? And maybe even season 2. I have to dig back out and remember what that second season was about. Nadia says, I don't know. I'm a sensitive person, so being able to close the spigot a little bit sounds good to me. Then I could just open it and just let the pressure out little by little. Yeah, so this idea of like, how much can we all, presumably, okay, if these are augments, presumably you can control that. Like, there'd be an app for that. You know what I mean? In Otherford's case, he totally like removed half of his body. But let's say we're not doing quite that extreme. Let's say we just do that head thing that he has. His thing is kind of like on his eye, but it's also connected to his brain. So let's say he could adjust it through his brain, and there was like an app, and there was like a dimmer or something like that. I think that could be helpful. Not a full on like removal, but just like in a little adjustment. That could be helpful. Wingrace says, I get the desire, but I hate the idea of losing myself. I hear you on that, Wingrace. Like that is the reason why I do not drink. Well, there's a couple more reasons, but that's one reason, because what other people are like, oh, this is so relaxing. I do not like that feeling of not being in control, because I'm a little bit of a control freak when it comes to myself. And that desire, that whole idea of, just losing yourself in a way that you can't control when you come back. Like, I hate that idea. It's totally different from losing yourself dancing or singing or painting or something like that, where you can take yourself out of flow. You can just stop dancing if you want to kind of come back to the real world. But yeah, I also hate that feeling of just losing myself, because it feels like losing it, not just losing it, but like giving it away to something else, especially to the augments. Is a little nerve-wracking, because what if somebody hacks it? I don't know. They don't talk too much about cybersecurity in the future, but something to think about. Nadia says, in any case, if I ever had the choice of an augment, I would put in a matrix-like port in my brain so that I could know Kung Fu, right? I love learning. And I remember seeing that episode, or that scene in the Matrix, and being like, what if I could learn everything without going through the process of learning? Like, that'd be amazing. So many things I would learn if I could just be like, boop, got it, right? There's something about that does sound really interesting. But of course, it's a cheat because you're not going through the process of learning. Exoteric says, I took my very first class flight in February. Let's go. To go get my new car, 6'4" frame, never knew flights could be enjoyed. Okay, so for you, see, you're 6'4", I'm like 5'6". So you being 6'4", like you need to, my aunt is also like 6'1" or something like that. And she only flies first class because she's so tall. And when she flew it once, it was the same thing, Exoteric. She flew it one time and she was like, I'm not all scrunched up. My legs have space. She was like, I'm never going back. I am never going back, no matter how short the flight is, just so she can sit comfortably even if it's an hour, which is really, really funny. Nadia says, I'm 5'9" and my knees would be dead at the end of many flights. I only got business class a handful of times. Wow, Nadia, I didn't know you're so tall. You're way taller than me. Same height as PS2 Chipper. Interesting. Robert says, number one, this technique ain't great. Might as well just get assimilated. Very true. Nadia says, interesting thought. I guess it depends on how much of what you get augmented or what specifically you augment. PS2 Chipper says, you could not pay me to watch Discovery. Discovery's not that bad. It's not. It's really not. Exoteric says, this sounds just like my, I don't know how to say this, dysthmia? I don't feel the texture of emotions generally. Some things get through though, like opera or geeking out on designing a microcontroller. Yeah, it'd be like that. It'd be like not letting feelings get through. It'd be exactly like that. And potentially having control over that, like a dimmer switch. DJ Magic says, if it were controllable, I would give it a 3. Not an app though, because I'm not getting another iPhone. To quote my ex-girlfriend when drinking, woo, the world is spinning. That's funny. Like maybe a buffer between you and the input coming in at you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, now we got some fans of Shadowrun, which I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's a video game. Okay, sounds fun. Okay, so let's talk about the next type of technology on the list. So this type of technology is the one we see the most on the show. And this one is the simulation. The example that I'm going to use for this, the example episode, comes from TNG, The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 8, Future Imperfect. And in this episode, an alien child kidnaps Riker and makes him part of an elaborate simulation in an entire world where relationships can be rewritten with a thought. So in this episode, which I really like this episode. I think it's pretty cute and sweet that at the end, Riker's all like, you don't have to stay here anymore. Come with me to the Enterprise. And we never see him again. So they probably shipped him off to Earth to be raised by the Rashenkos for all we know. But anyways, in this case, this is different from a straight up memory wipe. It's different from an augment where you can maybe adjust the powerfulness, the power of your emotions. In this case, with the simulation, you can just rewrite the whole scenario. You can create whatever you want. You can create new relationships, new people. So the pros of this is that the sky's the limit. You can make a whole new world. You could populate it with all people. So in this case, this boy was left on this, I forget if it was a planet or an asteroid or a moon or what the rock body that he was on was, but basically he was living in a cave on this planetary body. And there were all these kind of like hollow emitters everywhere. And his people were being attacked by some bad guys. And his mom took him and went on the run. And so his mom left him in this cave with this technology. And then she left to like go fight or something. And then she never came back, which is super sad, right? So he's kind of got this Clark Kent situation going on. And she gave him this technology so that he'd have friends and he wouldn't be lonely in the meantime until she finally returned. So in his case, he hasn't just lost one person. He's lost everybody. Everyone he has ever known is gone. And he is by himself on this rock or planet or whatever inside this cave. So he is able to create a whole new world to kind of fill that void, which apparently works maybe. I don't know how many years he's been chilling in this cave before the away team shows up and before he kidnaps Riker. Maybe they say in the episode, but I don't remember. However long it was, it's been too long. And the upside of this is that you can create a whole entire world, right? You can experience as many relationships as you want. You can make endless copies of everyone you've ever known. You could bring them all back, or you could have new people. In this case, he made a whole world that was based around Riker's memories and experiences, things that he's never experienced. But the con of this, there's a couple. One is it sounds exhausting, right? Like your mind has to generate what the technology feeds on to create the world, which is just, on the one hand, it's like, that's what holodecks are for. It's to create your imagination. But you're like, man, dude, like, I don't want to do all the work. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I love running a holodeck program. You could just put it in there and click go, and then you just experience it. But when your brain has to create the whole world, that sounds really exhausting. The other con is kind of like the con of holodecks in general, which is that it's fake. And you know it's fake. And the reason you know it's fake is because you're the one generating it. So I feel like there's also kind of a limited amount of time of this effectiveness for this particular strategy, because at some point you're going to be like, it's just me, like whoever you're talking to, whoever you're hanging out with, whatever activity you're doing, at some point you're going to be like, nah, it's just me. There's not really anyone else here. It reminds me of the technology used in Ready Player 2. So if you did not know, Ready Player 1 is based on a book. The book is like 1,000 times better than the movie. The movie's super cute. The book is not super cute. The book is very dark and disturbing, but very good. And in Ready Player 1, they kind of live in this virtual world with these headsets and body devices. In Ready Player 2, they take that to a whole new level where you can actually experience people's memories and stuff. So we'll talk about that a little more with the next example of technology. So then I'll take it back to Ready Player 1. In Ready Player 1, you can wear not just the headset, like a virtual reality headset, but you can wear a full-on body suit so that everything you're experiencing in the virtual world, your body can physically experience as well. And so the main character was talking about how he had gotten like an extra upgraded suit where he could really feel everything, and he was using it to sleep with people in the made-up world, like sleep with fake people in the made-up world, not even like real other avatars, but fake people in the made-up world, which is of course what a lot of people are going to use holodecks for once those are invented. But he realized after just like, I don't know, a couple days or something, he was like, really, this is just elaborate masturbation. And it's just like, it's fake. It's not, there's no real person on the other side of this. This is literally a game that I made and it's fake. And he just returned the whole suit and getup back to the company, which I was kind of like, ew. In the book, it wasn't supposed to be a gross moment, but I was a little grossed out by it. But anyways, that's what this made me think of. This idea of like, you're generating it, and so it's fake. So there's some point when you're going to be like bored, or it's just not going to work anymore. It's going to run its course, I think. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people have a much better like imagination than me, and they could keep it going forever. And then you never have to experience grief because you just keep recreating the world you really want. And if you don't like it, you just change it. And it's so great. So I'm not really sure, but you let me know in the chat. Please rate this type of technology for what you think its effectiveness is from 1 to 5. 1 being this technology sucks and would not at all work. And 5 being this is awesome. This would absolutely work. So what do you think about the simulation? I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next technology example on the list. Yes, PS2 Chipper has gifted another membership. So if you want to join the Away Team, which is our channel membership, now is the time. First come, first served. Well, let me scroll up some more. Okay, we're back to Shadowrun. Okay, that's where we were. I agree. DJ Magic saying, I'm not getting another iPhone was an amazing line. We can say it's the best line of the night so far. There's been so many good lines, though. Yeah, so an emotion chip with a dimmer. Exactly, an emotion chip with a dimmer, which apparently, like, didn't Data, he was able to turn it off in First Contact when he didn't want it anymore. But I feel like, why wouldn't he be able to do that also? Like, why couldn't he be able to control it and put in a dimmer? When Grace says, perfect, we solved it. Exoteric says, wow, what an amazing array of humanity in this little chat room. Differences, similarities, teaching, learning, sharing. Humans are cool. I agree. Humans are cool. Huh. When Grace says, this reminds me of another DS9 episode. Are we going to keep playing this game where no one tells me what the DS9 episodes are so that I have no spoilers? This is my question to you, When Grace. Nadia says, I hardly ever watch this episode. It's so depressing. The thought that this alien was all alone for so long with only empty relationships available to him. I hate that thought, especially now that I'm a mom. Yeah, it's super sad, right? Like, I can't imagine leaving my kid in that situation. Exactly. But in this situation, it's like this was her only option to keep him safe while she went off to, I don't know. I don't remember what the story was. If she kept running or if she went to fight her. I don't remember what it was. But at least she didn't just leave him in a cave by himself. She left him with technology to kind of like keep him going. But yeah, the fact that she never returned is so sad. And I'm just really glad that Riker was able to show him a lot of compassion and say, we need to get this kid off this rock and get him around some other people. Like, yeah. PS2 Chipper gives this particular technology a rating of 3. Nadia says, exactly. It's one of the reasons why a bunch of us never miss Wednesday evenings with Shrees. Aw, I love that. And I love having you guys here. Nadia also says, I'm ranking this strategy as a 1. It sucks. It's terrible. PS2 Chipper says, that's the mark of a good writer. They create their own world for their characters. That is true. But I will say, that is true. Yes, I agree with you. And I will say sometimes with the writers who create amazing characters, I'm thinking of Tolkien, who made Lord of the Rings, and then the whole rest of the world of Middle Earth and all these other books, was so obsessed and inundated in that world. I wonder if he lost himself in it sometimes and was not able to access the real world. I wonder that sometimes about writers who go that deep into one particular world. Because there are other writers who are super prolific, but they write all different kinds of worlds and characters and places. And, they kind of explore things, but the ones who just go deep and they build everything from its mythology to like the songs they sing, to the clothes they wear, to the shoes they shot. I mean, every little bit, the blades of grass, I wonder if they lose themselves a little bit and end up in this simulation in their own minds. Captain says, like living in the Matrix, the question becomes, are you experiencing reality? But if it's real to you, it's a real experience, right? So then it's a real experience. Oh, I broke my brain. Yeah, so I think what you're saying, Mr. Captain, is if the simulation feels real, then it is real. And in the case of the Matrix, those who did not know that they were in the Matrix, they were kind of like, whatever, it's real life, right? But when Morpheus was talking to Neo in the first movie, he was like, you sense it. You feel something's wrong. You know something's off. You know this isn't right. You know this life is something's weird about it. This is not quite who you really are. And everything you're seeing seems a little fake. So even in the case in the Matrix where Neo doesn't totally know what the Matrix is, he's aware, he knows the name Matrix, and he's aware of the feeling of the Matrix. So he knows something's fake, even though he's not the one generating it, like in this case. So I think if you're the one generating it, you know it's fake even harder. You know what I mean? Like if it's something that someone else creates and you're not aware of the Matrix and you're in the Matrix, cool. But if you're the one making the Matrix and then living in the Matrix, then like, the jig is up. You kind of know what's going on. Nadia says, look at Barclay. He could only connect with the fake folks in the holodeck, and it hampered his ability to connect in person. And maybe the other way too, Nadia, is that he did not know how to connect with people in person, which is why he could only connect with the faux people in the holodeck. Like either way, right? It did not help him in working on his social skills to be in the holodeck, which it could have, but it didn't. He didn't use it to become better. He used it to become different and did not like translate that to his real world experience. So I don't know if it did him any favors. Exoteric says holodecks could not exist without robust AI. We even see its power wreak havoc many times. Yes, yeah, definitely we need some kind of computer programming, learning something to make a simulation work effectively without our brains having to generate it constantly like this poor kid. Yeah, Ready Player One was way darker. Yeah, it was way darker. And Ready Player Two is pretty not that great of a book, honestly. So if you're like, I should read that, they have, let me put it to you this way. I think there's like 10 chapters on John Hughes and then 10 chapters on Prince. It's not as good as Ready Player One, but the technology is so much more interesting. And we're going to talk about that more in the next example. DJ Magic says, you just explained a whole season story arc of discovery that was done in one episode of TNG. I would give this a 4. You could play out those moments of grief or hurt to allow you to work out issues. That is true. Now, here's my question to you, DJ Magic. How many people do you think would use it that way? You totally could. You could totally use the simulation to help you process grief and painful issues, or even to rewrite the past, because that is a therapeutic technique of rewriting the past. Let's say like some kid bullied you when you were in school, you could go back in your mind, and this time you stand up to the bully, or you beat the crap out of them, or whatever. Like that's a therapeutic technique where you kind of rewrite the past so that you feel better moving forward and you're not still stuck in that. So you could absolutely use simulations to do that. How many people do that though? I feel like everybody would just use it for like nonsense and not like to help them in life, but that's a good idea. I think they would if they had to, if someone forced them, if they were ordered to do like therapeutic simulations. And I think it could be super effective. Nadia says, ugh, I couldn't imagine using a holodeck in some bar or some ship for that. People walk in too often. They never lock the freaking doors. Do you remember that episode of the Orville? You know what? I'm going to get on tangent. I'm going to get on total tangent. Nadia says, I rank it as a 1, not because the tech sucks, because hello, holodeck, but because of its lack of effectiveness. Wingray says a midpoint. It would work, but it would cause more harm in the long run, I think. That's interesting. Exoteric says using the holodeck to simulate a bar on a ship with an actual bar says so much about someone's mental state. I'm a super introvert. That would be me. I didn't think about that. That he totally does. Barclay totally does recreate 10 forward in the holodeck when 10 forward is like right there on deck 10 in the front of the ship. Like he could just go there. That is really funny. DJ Magic says, I just realized that TNG episode with Riker you mentioned is the same as one of the Discovery story arcs. I don't know which one that is. I'll have to go back to Discovery because I'm blanking on what that could be. Oh, maybe Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says it. As we see here and in Discovery Season 3, you can only leave kids alone with the holodeck for so long. I guess it works for a minute, so 2 out of 5. I do not remember this episode at all. So I need to go back to this Discovery episode with some kid trapped in the holodeck because I don't recall it. PS2 Chipper says, no, Tolkien was a Christian. He also converted C.S. Lewis. Yes, he was a Christian. Did I say he wasn't? I don't know what I said, but what I meant to say about Tolkien was the way that he was but the way he was so involved in the creation of Middle Earth and so like obsessed with it. And I was actually thinking of C.S. Lewis because he's one of my favorite authors. And so is Tolkien. But they're two different paths. Like he wrote like everything about Middle Earth and C.S. Lewis wrote everything about everything else. You know, and a lot of his books also have a lot of Christian thoughts throughout it. But he's done just like so many different things, whereas Tolkien was like, this world was his world. Like he knew everything about the world, inside out, up, down, back, forward. It's pretty impressive. Nog is so sweet. I haven't even seen that much of DS9, and I freaking love Nog. Like I just like Nog is my favorite character so far. But I'm still in season 1, so maybe that'll change. DJ Magic says Barclay could have used it as a tool if he had guidance while doing it, but eventually he got things worked out. Yeah, he could have. Oh, the Kelpian. Duh. That's what I was missing. I was totally thinking of an actual kid. Yes, he did. And the funny thing is he had Counselor Troy that he could have gotten help from, but he had naughty fantasies about her in the holodeck as well. So when he actually did go into her office to get counseling and she did or said something similar to the simulation, he was like, he got all weirded out and ran out. So yeah, he needed guidance, but I guess not from Troy. Maybe he needed it from Guinan. Maybe Guinan needed to give him a good talking to and help him kind of like figure it out. Okay, yes, DJ Magic's the burn with the Kelpian. That is not at all what I was thinking. You know, I was trying to imagine what you guys were talking about. I'm thinking what episode had a little kid who was trapped in a holodeck, who couldn't get out, and they were making all these things up. Like I was trying to think of a kid, but in this case, the Kelpian, even though this exact scenario, you're right. The Kelpian's like grown when they find him, isn't he? But he's been stuck here since he was a kid. So he's got like the mind of a kid, but isn't he totally grown? Yeah, you're right. You're so right. You're so right. I did not at all put those two episodes together. Nadia says, I'm going to have to rewatch Discovery. I like it well enough, but it's so dark. I'll tell you what, Discovery has more tears than every other Trek show combined. So there is that. It was to the point where I was like, I don't even drink, but I was like, it'd be a funny drinking game if every time someone bursts into tears, you take a shot, just because of how many times a character just loses it. I would pay you not to watch it. That's funny. Okay, so let's do the next technology on the list, which I think we're all familiar with this episode. And this one I am calling the memory transfer. The example for this episode comes from The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 6, The Offspring. And in this episode, Data creates an android daughter named Lall, but due to a cascade failure in her positronic net, her life ends prematurely. It's super sad, and I cry literally every time I watch the end of this episode. But because her life was so enriching to Data, he stores all of her memories and experiences inside of himself. So this is where the technology from Ready Player 2 comes in. So in Ready Player 1, we have this virtual world that you can exist in if you put on the headset, and you can experience and talk to people and whatever. But in Ready Player 2, that technology goes to the next level. They discover like the phase 2 plans for the technology. And now there's something that you can kind of you like connect it to your spine, to like the base of your neck, to the top of your spine, and it reads your actual memories and your experience of those memories, and you can share those experiences with others. So like they can see your memory, they can feel your memory, they can feel like if you went I don't know, parasailing or something like that, and you saved it to the device, like if you went parasailing and you saved that memory to the device, you could share that with someone else, and they can hit play or whatever, and they can experience parasailing and see it through your eyes. They can feel the wind on their skin. They can feel your heart racing. They can feel like everything you felt physically and emotionally. They can feel it. Even like if you eat an apple and like it's, juicy and sweet and all of this, and that memory is saved inside the device, someone else can experience that as well. Like that same juicy, sweet, like they can feel all of those feelings in their physical body. So not just the physical feelings, but the emotions as well. And so if that technology existed, like that technology from Ready Player 2, where people could literally share experiences, I think that'd be really wild. Because one of the things that happens in Ready Player 2 because of this elevated technology is that there's a lot more tolerance in the world. And it's because people think like, you think this way, I think this way, we're so totally different. But when they start to share each other's experiences, they go, oh, the experience you had is just like the experience I had. I thought it was totally different. I thought you were different and I was different, but actually, now that I felt the way you're feeling, that's exactly how I was feeling. It's wild. It's such a cool idea. Like I really love, that is probably that is easily my favorite thing from Ready Player 2. And probably the only good thing about Ready Player 2 is the introduction of this kind of technology, which brings people together in a really neat way. So anyways, let's say that technology existed. So in this case, where Data lost Lol, he got to keep all of her experiences and all of her memories. So the pro of this, the positive for this kind of technology, is that that person's essence can kind of go on as long as you go on. That you get to see life through their eyes. You get to experience it through their memories and their emotions, which is kind of cool. Also, you don't feel as much like you've lost them because you can replay their memories. You can replay their experiences as well. I mean, in Data's case, he could replay things. So if you had this Ready Player 2 technology, you could also replay things. But then there's some definite downsides I see with this technology. For one, I don't want to integrate someone else's entire life story into my mind. Like that is overwhelming. That's way too much. Data's positronic net can obviously handle that. But in the case of the Ready Player 2 technology, you wouldn't have to do that. Like their memories are stored in the cloud, like in this virtual world, and you can kind of access them whenever you want. So that's kind of a different thing. That's more like looking through their photo album, but you can experience all the things in the album. So I think I'd be more okay with something that's not quite downloaded to myself, to my person. But the other thing that I think is a con is more of just like a timing thing. If we had this technology where we could share experiences with one another, I'd rather do that while they're alive. Like asking my grandmother about stuff in her childhood or stuff when she was my age or stuff in her 20s or whatever. It'd be cool if she could be like, oh, here, you can just experience what it was like then. And I could see that. That'd be wild. Like, I think I would have a whole new understanding of my family and my heritage that way. And there'd be no benefit to me to just experience that after they're gone. Like that to me would be like, man, I wish I would have known that earlier. I feel like is what I would think. And then also a con for me is I wonder if I'd be able to move on. This one I'm not really sure. And I would love to know what you think in the chat. But I don't know if having access to all of their memories and experiences would help me process grief and move on, or would keep me stuck living in that world, in that bubble forever, because like I have them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it would help me process or if it would hinder me from processing. I'm not really sure. So let me know how effective you think this technology is. From 1 to 5, this is the memory transfer. And 1 would be like, this technology sucks. It would not work. It's terrible. And 5 would be like, yeah, this technology would totally work. It's amazing. And I would absolutely do it right now. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to read the chat, and then we're going to go to the last technological strategy on the list. Hold on. Okay, Mr. Captain says, back to our previous discussion, Discovery gave us Strange New Worlds. I'm also behind on Strange New Worlds, but season 3 comes out this summer, I think, maybe June. If the last thing I saw was correct. So I've got some time to catch up. And it only has 2 seasons with 10 episodes. So I can catch up on that a lot faster than I can catch up on 7 seasons of DS9. Nadia says, and thank God for that, because Strange New Worlds is fabulous. Okay, so PS2 Chipper gives this technology a 4, which is pretty high. Robert gives it a 5, which has any of our techniques gotten a 5 so far? Maybe. That's pretty high also. Robert says a 5 on this tech. I'd like to know how others experience the world and combine it with mine. Yeah, I agree with you, Robert, on half of that. I want to understand how other people experience the world. I'll necessarily need to combine it with mine because I have enough challenges keeping track of my own situation. But I think just experiencing it, like sampling that experience would be enough to enrich my experience, which is so wild. Nadia says, I cry every time I see this, but the tech, I would rank it as a 4. It's a great way to keep people with us, but not a 5 because it's also a bit invasive. And I wouldn't want to know every experience someone lived. Exactly. I also would not want to know every experience. In Ready Player 2, there are cyber celebrities, and those celebrities' experiences are carefully curated by their PR teams. Because whatever you upload to the cloud, like whatever experiences you share, it's all optional. Just like social media, you share what you want to share or don't share if you don't want to share. And so for those celebrities, their team carefully curates which of their life experiences actually get shared into the cloud, which I just think is so funny because you're like, of course they would. If we're translating like the Instagram life to that kind of technology, then you'd only want your highlight reel to be something people can experience, not when you're like sad or bummed or bored or like being a regular person. So there could be that level of curation as well for the person, the person who's lost. Like for Lol in this case, she may have decided which experiences she wants to be shared and which experiences are just for her and they're not for the whole world. They're not for public consumption, or which experiences she wants for data and which experiences she wants for the world, which I think is kind of an interesting thought as well. Nadia says, think about it. Intimate moments with others or private, embarrassing moments after a food poisoning incident. Let people have their privacy. But that's the other thing too, is like some of the negative experiences are what help us understand people better. So those are also things you can share, but it's like, be totally up to you. In this case, Data just like took everything, good, bad, indifferent, which makes sense because he's Data, right? DJ Magic says, nope, that's a class 1 negative Ghost Rider. That's all I need is to have a random memory pop into my head and someone else experienced it. I've done and seen too much dumb ish to share something like that. That's funny. So DJ Maddox has given this a -1 as far as the effectiveness of this strategy. And it's saying, I have my own memories. I do not want nor need anyone else's memories or anyone else's experiences, which is fair, which is totally, totally fair. PS2 Chipper says, oh yeah, that was one of the subplots of Dune, that the Bene Gesserit did not take the poison during the pregnancy. That was one of the subplots. Okay, the Bene Gesserit. Oh, okay, for the food poisoning. Yeah. Yes, right. The Bene Gesserit. So, like the mom in Dune was pregnant, and then she drank the poison or whatever, and then the poison that makes you see the future. But because she was pregnant, now the baby got that poison, and now the baby can see the future, which is like a big no-no. And then everybody freaked out because they were like, "You didn't tell us you had a kid. You can't do this with a baby. You messed up the baby." And she was like, "Oh well, it's done now." And then just so you know, because I did read the Dune books, I read the first book, which was like 10,000 hours long. There's no way I'm getting to book 2, 3, 4. There's no way I'm going on with the Dune series. But when that baby was born, that baby had all kinds of crazy knowledge about the future, like all the time, which is something that only Bene Gesserits are supposed to have after years of training and practicing and all these things. So she was like 3 years old, and she was like telling people their futures and stuff. She is basically Barclay. She has no friends. She's very awkward. She always tells people stuff they don't want to know, and nobody likes her. So it's pretty sad. Mr. Captain 93 says the memory transfer couldn't have worked too well because no one remembered Lol in season 1 of Picard. They did not remember Lol, but Daj, was that her name in Picard? Whatever I think her name was Daj, the main girl, the main character in Picard season 1 was like Lol 2.0. So I think they were paying homage to her that way. Wingrace says, this gets a little too close to Voyager when the War Monument shoves the horrible memories without consent. Yes, that episode, I don't know. I thought the name of the episode was going to come to me. It did not. But yes, that episode when they came across that monument, and it was reminding them of this terrible war that happened, but all the memories were coming in fragments, and everybody was traumatized, and nobody could sleep, and that was awful. And then they decided to like power up the monument so that it could work better, so that everyone could experience it and have the memories going all the way through from beginning to end instead of being fragmented. And then they added a buoy outside to warn people that, hey, if you come near this planet, this is what's going to happen. So I think that was the part, is like missing consent and the way it just jumped into their brains and all of that. But in this case, certainly with Data and Lall, Data absorbed her memories without Lall's knowledge or consent. In the case of the technology from Ready Player 2, you only share the things that you want to share, like that you personally want to share. So it's not necessarily everything. And then other people only experience what they want to experience. So there's a lot more consent going on in that particular scenario. Exoteric says there's an old Robin Williams movie where he edits people's lives for their funerals in a world where everyone has eye cameras recording everything. I haven't seen that movie. Huh. That's interesting. They did do an episode like that, though, on Black Mirror with the eyes that record everything. They did a couple episodes with eyes that record everything, now that I think about it. PS2 Chipper says, I heard they did not want to name drop Lall because of licensing fees. Who the heck knows? DJ Magic says, maybe if we got a Picard season 4, Data would use the planet where Picard got his body to transfer Lall into a new body as well, and then she could join Starfleet and she could be the new Data. So many possibilities. Well, on that note, let's talk about the last technology on the list, which is also kind of like something they use a lot, but this is unique. The way they're using it in this scenario is very unique. That's why it gets its own category. And this one I'm calling the hologram. The example episode for this technology comes from Discovery, Season 5, Episode 6, Whistle Speak. In that episode, this is a very short, like 3-minute scene in the whole episode, but Dr. Culber uses a holographic replica of his grandmother to help him process some difficult philosophical and spiritual questions that are coming up for him. He helped create this program specifically for grief alleviation therapy. So that is the entire function of this technology. So this is really neat. The reason why I said it's kind of like an oldie but a newie is because, yes, we've had holodecks forever. Yes, you can recreate the person. Okay. But in this case, this particular therapy aims to recreate the person who you've lost, like down to every little detail. Their personality, their smile, their laugh. So I guess it takes whatever data is in the database of people, maybe like scans from anytime they were in a transporter and like logs, or I don't know how this works, but somehow they recreate the person completely so that you can interact with them. So in this case, he brought his grandmother up to ask these philosophical questions. But before doing that, he was like, hey, I want to look up this recipe for mofongo. Can you like remind me what our family recipe is or whatever? And she's like, oh, I never made that. You know, our recipe is totally inedible. It's gross. So I would just wait for you to go to sleep as a kid. And then I would throw it in the trash and I would just replicate it for you. And you were always like, oh, I'm amazing. I mean, and they're just kind of like joking and laughing. It's really sweet. And the idea is that, I think the idea behind this is that you can talk to the person you've lost and kind of process the grief that way. You can still interact with them. You can ask them questions, and their reactions will be just like they were when they were alive. They'll have the same sense of humor, the same, I don't know how they could possibly have the same memories, but the same memories apparently, and all of that. And this is kind of separate from that last technology where you're experiencing it with them or from them. This is like they're still a separate entity, but you can call them up at will and interact with them, which is a really neat technology. So as far as the pros go, you could talk to your loved one again, which is incredible, which is amazing, which is mind-blowing. But for the cons, I feel like it's the same con that we had for all the other things, is that it could potentially keep you stuck. Like, I'm not sure if this technology would absolutely help people grieve better or if it would keep them in grief longer. And I guess a caveat maybe I would put with this technology is guidance, which I think maybe DJ Magix or Captain 93, somebody said earlier of like, or maybe it was Exoteric, somebody said earlier that Barclay needed a little bit of guidance while he was doing his holodeck stuff. That could have maybe helped him improve his social skills instead of him just going in and doing shenanigans. If he had some guidance, it could have maybe helped him improve. In this case, maybe that's what this technology needs for me to feel better about it. That if there was some counseling or some guidance in how to use this hologram therapy program, then people could process things without getting like trapped or sucked into using this program and leaning on this program forever. So I think some things like if it's a sudden loss and you didn't get a chance to say goodbye, that could be really cool. This could be your chance to be like, it was sudden. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, to say everything you want to say. I think that could be good for tying up those loose ends. But I also, I don't know, just part of me feels like if I lost someone and I could just call them back up in a second with this technology, I probably just would. I just would. And I just would keep doing it. I don't know how long it would take for me to finally be like, okay, let me turn this program off. It would probably take a really long time because I wouldn't have to if they act the same, if they laugh the same, if they joke the same. It'd be the same kind of idea as the simulation where you're like, I know this is fake. I know it's not real. I need to let this go. But I don't know how long it would take me to come to that realization. Probably a long time. And it would probably take someone else from the outside being like, hey, you've been spending all your time with that hologram. Like you need to stop using that program. You need to do other things. You need to experience life still. You need to go, you need to keep living and not be stuck here. So let me know your thoughts in the comments and in the chat. How would you rate this particular technology of the hologram, the therapeutic hologram? Would you rate it as a 1 of this technology is not good, it's not going to work, or a 5, this technology is amazing, this would absolutely work? Let me know your thoughts, and I'm going to check the chat. PS2 Chipper says 1 because it's in Discovery, but 5 because they ripped off a good idea. Where did they rip this idea from? Where was this idea from? Or is it just, are you saying just from like other Star Trek episodes? Nadia says, was it Barclay who met with Stephen Hawking and Einstein in a holodeck to talk through scientific philosophical questions? Yes, it was. That was in the Nth Degree when he was super smart because of the Cytherians. So he did replicate them to chat with them. I think Data also replicated like Freud to talk to him about his nightmares that he was having in what is that episode called? Oh no, when he was having nightmares. And I think, trying to think of who else would just recreate people to just chat with them. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just Barclay and Data who would recreate people to chat with them. Also in Futurama, they did that a lot, where they would just recreate people to chat with them. And so I think that's a cool idea. Like, I think that's really cool that you could call people up and like chit chat with them. But like, that's totally different from this grief therapy hologram. That's just like, oh, let me talk to famous people from the past, or let me talk to celebrities, or let me talk to whatever. But I think it's different if it's somebody you just lost and like you're chit chatting with them in order to help you grieve and process. I think that's the difference, because it'd even be cool to talk to your own ancestors, right? Like your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, and see what they were like. That would be so interesting. I would absolutely do that. But if I had just lost someone, I don't know if this particular technology is something I would use, because I think I would get lost in it. But like I said, maybe it comes with counseling and guidance, and maybe it's a little more controlled in your use of it, so you can't get addicted to it. Maybe it's like a therapy session where you've got this certain amount of time, and you know what I mean? Like maybe there's some parameters that help you not get totally hooked on it, but without those parameters, I would get hooked on it. Nadia says, I rank this as a 5. This technology is amazing. Exoteric says, I'm fine with this in a weird way. Native Americans or indigenous peoples speak to their ancestors' spirits for wisdom, and widows talk to their buried husbands at gravestones. So as long as it's an intentional tool, it seems good. It seems basically what you're saying is like, this is what people are doing now, just without technology, without any kind of like visual representation, talking and walking around them in circles. DJ Magic says 555. If it were for a limited time interactions, like an hour at a time, I would do this right now. I'd be watching and discussing the show with a good friend who passed, or with my dad. Oh, that'd be really sweet. See, stuff like that, like, yeah, I would have to have parameters. Or I would only use this. I would never lose anybody. I would just use this as a huge crutch. Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Mr. Captain 93 says 3. Now you have me thinking what a holographic dog with a holo emitter would be like. They'd be amazing as long as they had, like, if they had little, like the doctor's mobile emitter where they could like go outside and stuff. Yeah, it'd be amazing. Because they would also make holographic poop that you don't have to scoop up, which would be great. Exoteric says, seriously, Einstein and Hawking and Planck and Avogadro and Copernicus. Yeah, that would be the first thing I do with a holodeck too. The first thing I would do with a holodeck, I don't know what the first thing I would do with a holodeck, but I can't imagine any scenario of me in a holodeck where I would want to talk to Hawking or Avogadro or Copernicus or like any of the great like philosophical thinkers or physicists, or like I probably would not talk to any of them. But that's really interesting. Wingrace says the doctor had had some when he went Mr. Hyde in Darkling. He had some what? Hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah, the Doctor had some chit chats in the holodeck with somebody. Was it with? Yeah, I don't remember that episode super well because it was bad. But yeah, okay. So there was a couple people who did that. They used the holodeck to talk to famous people, which is like, it's a whole thing you could do. DJ Magic says, but it would need limits, like 2 visits a week or something for an hour at a time. I think it would limit the abuse of it. Yeah, PS2 Chipper says, too long to go into. When you are dealing with grief, it is internal, not external. When you create a character to communicate, you are essentially processing your emotions subconsciously. Exoteric says, how learning at the feet of a simulation of Aristotle or St. Thomas of Aquinas sounds like an amazing Saturday. Where's the popcorn? And Wingrace says Gandhi, Lord Byron. There are lots of famous people you guys would love to meet, which I think is so fun. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it, but I love that you would do it. I love that you would do it because I feel like that is a very elevated use of the holodeck. I think I'd use the holodeck to do like, I don't know, crazy sports that I couldn't get hurt doing. Like I love rock climbing. I'd probably use the holodeck to go rock climbing without actually hurting myself if I fall. I'd probably use it for very like mundane things that wouldn't necessarily expand me as a person. But I love that you would do that. I love that you would do that. Okay, so it sounds like this one is getting the highest rating so far. I think it's probably the least invasive of all the things we've talked about. And like DJ Maddox has mentioned many times, a little bit of guardrails around it might make this technology work really effectively. DJ Magic says, very much like Tony Stark in Iron Man 2, I believe where he processes the last time he saw his parents. Which, man, it has been so long since I saw Iron Man 2. I don't remember that at all. I mean, I vaguely remember it, but I don't remember the details. When Grace would meet Gene Roddenberry, that would be the person to put in the holodeck. I love that, When Grace. Exoteric says, who better to learn to appreciate Shakespeare than hanging out with daggone Shakespeare or learn ethics from Plato? Yeah, that'd be funny if you... The only thing I'm thinking, Exoteric, is have you ever heard people say never meet your heroes? Because they might disappoint you. As I'm guessing the second half of that saying. I don't know what the second half is, but that's what happens. Sometimes you meet your heroes and you're like, oh, they're nothing like I thought they were, and then you lose like all the shininess that was on them kind of comes off and they're like a regular person and also maybe not a nice person sometimes. And that's such a bummer. And so part of me feels like that also may be why I wouldn't necessarily meet. I'm not saying like Plato and Shakespeare are my personal heroes, but that may be another reason why I might not want to meet certain celebrities or whatever, is because I might think, I might want to just save the mystique. So whatever thing about them that I love, I can continue to love without conflating it with who they are as a real person. PS2 Chipper says, woo, the world is spinning from Neelam. Thank you, Neelam. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking because, so do you know the actor who plays Harry Kim, Garrett Wong? So I met him and we had this ridiculously long conversation. He came into my club of sci-fi people and he talked with us for a couple of hours just about like life and acting and what it was like on the show and, just whatever. Like he was just shooting the breeze about all kinds of things. He was a genuinely lovely human being. He was such a down-to-earth person. And bonus, he's a sci-fi fan, like a huge fan. And he was a huge Star Trek fan. And it was so fun talking to him the way that I talked to you guys, right? It was so fun to be like, you remember that episode where Tom said such and such and such, and then Harry did this, and he's like, oh my gosh, yes. Like that was such a joy to me. And it brought so much life. And it was one of the best conversations I'd ever had, like that whole year. I think this was 2020. So that was like a rough year. And so that was like the best conversation the whole year. And the next day, not the next day, like it was the next day or 2 days later, I was in another conversation with the actor who plays Worf, which is Michael Dorn. And he stayed also for an hour or two also to just chat with people and shoot the breeze and talk about acting and whatnot. But he was very much like, and I don't know if he's a huge sci-fi fan because he does do a lot of different kind of acting work, but he was very much like, acting is my job. This is my career. I show up and I do my job. And so he answered questions, but it was from that viewpoint of like, well, as an actor, here's kind of what I was thinking, or here are the kind of roles I like to play, here are the kind of roles I don't like to play. But he definitely was not like geeking out about the show, geeking out about episodes. He was like kind of shying away from talking about Worf, because I think he talks about Worf so much. He talks about being Worf like so much that he kind of wanted to talk about his new projects, and he kind of wanted to, he wanted to break out the mold, which I totally get. Because like that show is 40 years old and people are still like Worf, So I think Michael Dorn is still like, okay, like, yes, that was great. I'm really honored. And can we talk about something else now? So that conversation was great. It was great. And a lot of people on that call are huge DS9 fans. And so they just got to like thank him and tell him how much his character meant to them and all these things. It was great. But I will say for me, the experience was really different because I'm not up on my DS9 games. So I didn't have a lot of that context. I only had the TNG context for me. But also like you could see that, like I could see their different energies, because Michael Dorn was like, hey guys, like let's talk about acting. And Garrett Wang was like, hey guys, let's talk about sci-fi, And so for me, that's kind of like Never Meet Your Heroes. Like meeting Garrett Wang was like, I'm a fan of Harry Kim and I'm a huge super fan of Garrett Wang, right? Like he's just like so delightful. And it could have been different. And we actually talked about that, about the Meeting Your Heroes, because he's met a lot of the cast for all the other Star Trek shows, right? And so he talked about that. Like some people you meet and you're like, oh man, like they're so great. And then some people met and he was just like, wow, they are just not great. He didn't name names for the not great people. He did name names for the great people. Like when he first met Sir Patrick Stewart and like all this, like he did name the good stuff, but he was like, there are also other people that I met that I wish I would have met them, because Never Meet Your Heroes. So anyways, all that to say is like, I don't know. That's why I don't know if I would actually meet celebrities or heroes in the holodeck personally. That was a really, really long response to that. I appreciate y'all staying, hanging out with me, and just chit-chatting. No, that kind of thing doesn't appeal to you. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, I don't want to hang out with Shakespeare. I have a hard enough time understanding Shakespeare just reading it. I don't know if he talked like that, but if he did, I would need another universal translator just to like make it regular people speak. So it does sound cool, but I probably would pass on the Shakespeare room. Okay, but this is the simulated version. What a concept to choose the real version and then the edited version. The question is, can I edit the version? Can I be like, delete the wife? Can I be like, make Shakespeare, but make him more relatable to me? Because then it's not really Shakespeare. So am I defeating the purpose? I don't know. Exoteric says, Harry was the me in Voyager. Harry was the me in Voyager. We need Star Trek Kim. Oh, poor Kim. Michael Dorn likes to fly jets. I did not know that. I really felt like I'd be him if I were in Voyager. Smart, kind, occasionally painfully naive. Yes, that was absolutely Harry Kim, but he was such a sweetheart. Nadia says, that's a great discussion topic for another evening. Which character in Star Trek would you be and why? I bet some of the answers would be revealing. Yeah, that is a really good question. Exoteric says, nice. That's so cool. He was a proper nerd. He really is, and I was here for it. Like, because a lot of these actors, this is their job. They're not necessarily sci-fi fans. This is a job. This is one job of many. Like they have a living to make. But when they are also super fans, like nerds, I don't know, just like touches my heart in a special way. Crazy Normie YT says, I would be a Latino Barclay, which is funny. Would you be the Barclay who's like smooth and suave, or would you be the Barclay who's super like socially awkward? Exoteric says, for sure, Nadia, between all the shows or one show at a time, it would be hilarious. Oh my gosh, there's so many characters, right? With all the 50 million Star Treks plus the movies. And if you had to pick one of them, how would you do it? It'd be so hard. Wingray says, when I met Michael Dorn, he only wanted to talk about how he was trying to get his Captain Worf show greenlit. Oh, that's interesting. That must have been the project he was working on at the time. I will say I loved Worf in Picard season 3. That was like my favorite Worf ever. I don't know. I love that like warrior monk thing. That was just really a fun twist that I did not see coming from his TNG days. However, like I said, I'm not up on my DS9, so maybe that was already apparent back then. I don't know. Nadia says, don't linguistics consider the time of Shakespeare to be the beginning of modern English? That sounds like a question for an English teacher. I do not know. Nadia says, am I the only person here who never met any of the Star Trek actors? Crazy Dorby says, no, you're not alone. Phew. Okay, Nadia says, I think I would want to be Guinan. Of course, if Picard actually was married, I'd be his wife's character. You could be Vash, because That was a thing in real life. Okay, Crazy Normie clarified that he would be awkward Barclay, messing around with same AR computer program. Well, that is it for the list. Thank you so much for everyone who came live. Thank you if you're watching on the replay. What we did today was we talked about 5 different types of technology that could be used to cure or eliminate or handle or process grief. And the question was, for each of these 5 technologies, what do you think on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being, this sucks, it would never work. 5 being, this is amazing, I would absolutely use this technology. So if you're just joining us now and you missed the beginning, you can actually rewind it right now in real time, which is amazing about live streams. But if you're watching on the replay, you went through it in order probably. For those of you who are watching live, like, you can go back to the beginning, you can wait till this is over and start over and just see all the other technologies that were mentioned, and let me know in the comments what you think about each technology. Would you use it? Would you not use it? Do you think it would be effective? Do you think it wouldn't? Which of these things is worth developing for our own peace of mind? Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear from you. And if you have not yet done so, be sure to subscribe. I've got some exciting content coming up that I can't wait to share. It's going to be so fun. Of course, it's going to take time though. So that's why I'm being vague. So that way I don't make promises that I can't keep. But just trust me that I love hanging out with you every weekend or every Wednesday. I love coming here and just chatting and nerding out. And I have some exciting things that I want to talk about, and some interesting things and some weird things that I want to talk about moving forward. And I hope you will join me every Wednesday to talk Star Trek. Plus, we're going to be talking about other things outside of Star Trek that are still all sci-fi moving forward as well. So we're going to be just talking about a whole bunch of things. It's going to be fun conversations, and I will love to have you here. PS2 Chipper reminded there is still a membership up for grabs. So if you do want to become a member of the Away Team, which is a member of this channel, you want to grab that membership before this live stream ends so that you can join. Nadia says, I'd probably be more like his wife in The Inner Light. Oh yeah, she is. She's lovely. I like her. I thought you would like that, Nadia. No, not Vash. One Grace says you can be Picard's random Victorian wife from Generations. Guinan is very wise. She's got all that life experience. Nadia is playing a rolled up piano. Oh, you could be, what's her name? Lieutenant whatever, who was from the Stellar Cartography. She was nice. I think that would have been a good match, actually. I liked her a lot. Woohoo! Exoteric, welcome. Snatched up that membership. Oh, I love this. The inner wife. Of course, leave it to Wingrace to have something super clever to say. Wingrace, you're so clever. Exoteric says, this was such a thoughtful subject matter. I will definitely come back for more. Well, I would love to have you back for more. Darren, that was her name. I did not remember that. That was her last name, right? Lieutenant Darren? Yeah, I would not have remembered that. That was not the name I was thinking. I was thinking like Kelly or something. But it was great having you here. I will see you all next time.